My mom looked me in the eye and said it's about $25,000 a year for each of them. I didn't hesitate. I told her straight up, I don't owe you anything. 3 months after that, my stepsister reached out and asked if we could meet in person. I'm 32 now, but everything started unraveling back when I was 16. That's when my whole world flipped upside down. These days, I run a software development company. I've got 30 people on my team and offices spread across 3 cities. It didn't come easy. I built this life one tough, painful step at a time, and I'm damn proud of it. Never in a million years did I think my mother would show up after 16 years of silence, especially not asking for tens of thousands of dollars for the kids she chose instead of me. Back when I was a kid, until I turned 12, it was just me and my mom, Evelyn, living in a tiny 2-bedroom apartment. Money was tight, but at least we had each other. Mom worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. I grew up fast, learned how to take care of myself. I cooked whatever I could, kept up with my schoolwork without being told, and made it a point not to be any trouble. I saw how hard she was working, and I loved her deeply for it. Then came Frank. He had a solid job in construction, a house of his own, and a shiny new truck parked out front. At first, he seemed all right, polite, even, but he never made any effort to bond with me. Still, I hoped maybe things would start to get easier for us. 6 months into their relationship, Mom dropped the news that they were getting married. Not long after, we moved into Frank's place. And just a month after the wedding, she told me she was pregnant. By that time, I was 13. I had mixed feelings, sure, but I wanted to be happy for her. She was glowing, painting the nursery, talking nonstop about the baby. Frank started being more present too, but only when it came to Mom and the baby, not me. At dinner, he'd look right past me like I wasn't even there. Just another object in the room. Then the small things started slipping. Mom stopped coming to my school events, no band concert, no debate finals. She always said she was too exhausted from the pregnancy. I tried to understand. I really did. But then Frank started grumbling about how much my school activities were costing. He said they were unnecessary, especially now that they had a baby on the way. And Mom? She didn't defend me. She just stared at her belly and changed the subject. Lena came into the world when I was 14. She cried constantly, needed everything, and took up all of Mom's energy and attention. I stepped in where I could, changing diapers, warming bottles, anything to help out. Part of me hoped it would bring Mom back to me, even just a little. But it didn't. Instead, Frank started making little remarks about how much it cost to raise someone else's kid. And Mom? She stayed silent. Always silent. When I was 15, she announced another pregnancy. By then, I was already working weekends at the local grocery store. I bought my own clothes, paid for my school supplies, and handed over half my paycheck to help with bills. I thought maybe, just maybe, Frank would see I was pulling my weight. He didn't. Owen was born right before I turned 16. We'd moved to a bigger house, but somehow I ended up shoved into the smallest room, a glorified office, really. My old furniture didn't even fit. I slept on a futon while Lena and Owen got matching bedroom sets and big, bright rooms. When I brought it up, Mom told me I should be thankful I had a space to myself at all. Then came the moment that broke me. 3 months after Owen's birth, I overheard Frank telling Mom they should dip into my college fund, money my grandparents had been saving for me since I was born, so they could remodel the kitchen. Mom didn't hesitate. She brushed off my future like it meant nothing. When I confronted her, something changed in her eyes. She looked at me, cold as stone, and said, "You've never appreciated anything Frank's done for you. He's right about you." 2 weeks later, they called a family meeting. Frank did all the talking. Said raising 3 kids was expensive and the babies needed more space and resources. He looked at me and said, "You're almost an adult now. It's time you learn to stand on your own." Mom just stared at the kitchen table, then finally looked up and said, "We've spoken to your grandparents. They've agreed to take you in. We need to put our focus on Lena and Owen now. They're little, they need us more." They gave me 2 weeks to pack up my life and leave the only home I'd known for 4 years. When I called my grandparents, my real dad's parents, they were stunned. Mom had told them I was having trouble and needed more structure. The truth left them speechless. Within hours, they arranged to come get me that weekend. No way were they leaving me in that house a second longer than they had to. My Aunt Carla, my dad's sister, drove 5 hours just to help me move. She broke down crying when she saw how few boxes I had. Mom kept her distance during the move. She tossed out the usual fake lines, "This is for the best, you'll understand one day." Frank didn't even try to act like he cared. He helped load my futon onto the truck like he couldn't wait to be rid of me. The day I left, Mom gave me a stiff hug and said she'd call soon. She never did. My grandparents welcomed me with open arms and real, unwavering love, but adjusting wasn't easy. For months, I had nightmares replaying that moment over and over, the one where my mom chose her new family and left me behind. I threw myself into school and my job at the local hardware store, determined to depend on them as little as possible. They insisted on covering my essentials, but I paid for everything else. Every extra dollar I made went into a college savings fund. Therapy became a lifeline. It helped me work through the pain of being left behind, even though that wound never really closed. My therapist helped me see it clearly. Mom's decisions were a reflection of her own flaws, not a measure of my value. Bit by bit, I started to rebuild who I was. My grandparents and Aunt Carla were my anchor. They showed me what real, unconditional love looks like. No strings, no judgment, just pure support. I finished high school near the top of my class and landed a partial scholarship to a state university. I chose computer science. I'd always had a knack for figuring things out and building from scratch. All through college, I worked about 30 hours a week and packed my summers with extra classes so I could finish early. My professors noticed the effort. I guess they saw something in me. One of them even connected me with an internship which ended up becoming my first full-time job after graduation. I climbed the ladder fast, worked longer hours than anyone else, took on projects nobody else wanted. By 25, I was leading a dev team. By 27, I'd built enough connections and stashed away enough money to start my own company. The business took off in a way I hadn't dared to dream. What began as 3 of us in a rented office ballooned into 30 employees in just 2 years. And during all those 16 years, not a word from my mother or Frank. Through extended family, I'd hear the occasional update. Lena was excelling in school. Owen loved soccer. They sounded fine. Like distant relatives I barely knew. I didn't feel much. Maybe a flicker of curiosity here and there, like when you hear about some third cousin's wedding. Then, out of nowhere, on some random Tuesday, I got an email. The sender? A name I hadn't seen in over a decade, victoriamartin@email.com. The subject line? Just one word, reconnecting. The email itself was shockingly casual, like she was picking up after a long-lost friend, not the son she'd abandoned. She said she'd heard about my business doing well and wanted to talk about family matters. She suggested grabbing coffee over the weekend. I stared at that screen for over an hour, my emotions cycling like a storm, curiosity, anger, even a small, foolish spark of hope. I forwarded it to my therapist, who advised me that sometimes closure can come from hearing someone out as long as I set clear boundaries and chose the terms. After 3 days of back and forth in my head, I sent a short reply. Agreed to meet her at a coffee shop near my office, someplace neutral where I could leave anytime. Seeing her again after all those years didn't hit me the way I thought it would. She looked older, a lot older, gray streaks in her hair, deep lines across her face. And Frank was right there beside her, bigger, balder, and just as unreadable as ever. I thought I'd feel this overwhelming wave of emotion, but instead it felt like I was meeting 2 strangers. Mom gave me a quick, awkward hug. Frank reached out for a stiff handshake. They started with small talk, told me I looked great, said they were proud of what I'd accomplished. Mom talked like our separation had been some normal thing, like I'd left the nest, not like I'd been shoved out of it. After 15 minutes of surface-level chatter, weather, traffic, some local news, Mom's tone shifted. She leaned in and said, "Your sister and brother are starting college next year." That familiar tone came back, the one she used when she wanted a favor. "We're so proud," she added. Lena got into Cornell, and Owen's heading to NYU. Frank leaned forward in his seat, his face serious. "College costs a fortune these days," he said. "Just the housing alone is through the roof." Mom kept talking, not quite meeting my eyes. "We've heard your company's doing very well. The business seems really successful." I didn't say a word. Just let the show play out. Finally, she got to the point. "We think it's only fair you help with their tuition. They're your siblings after all." "Family supports family," Frank added, nodding like it was all perfectly reasonable. Then came the number. "We'll need about $25,000 per year for each of them. First payments due by August." I was stunned. Speechless for a moment. 16 years. Not a single call. No birthday cards. No apologies. Just silence while I picked up the pieces they left behind. And now they wanted $50,000 a year like it was no big deal? I looked at them and said, "Let me get this straight, you expect me to pay 50 grand a year for college for 2 people I haven't seen since they were in diapers?" Mom's smile twitched. "Their family, your brother and sister." I stayed calm. My voice didn't shake, though my hands clenched beneath the table. "I'm sorry," I said. "But that's not going to happen." Her face shifted from hopeful to stunned, like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. After everything we did for you, she said. If it hadn't hurt so much, I might have laughed at how ridiculous that sounded. I looked her dead in the eye. What exactly did you do for me? You tossed me aside the second I became inconvenient. I raised you for 16 years, she snapped, her polite mask slipping completely. And this is how you repay me? My voice stayed quiet but steady. I don't owe you a thing. And I don't owe them anything either. Frank's face turned red, boiling over. You ungrateful little A. I think we're done here, I cut him off, standing up from the table. Mom grabbed my wrist, tighter than I expected. Her fingers dug in like claws. You'll help your siblings, she hissed, or you're dead to me. I gently peeled her hand off my arm. You made me dead to you 16 years ago, I said, the moment you chose them over me. Her scream followed me as I walked away. How dare you? After everything we sacrificed, you wouldn't have your precious company if I hadn't taught you how to work hard. People turned to stare. Frank leaned over, trying to shush her, his face twisting with anger. The manager came toward their table, concern written all over his face. I didn't turn back. I walked out. But I knew that wasn't the end of it. By that night, my phone was lighting up nonstop calls, texts, voicemails. Some were guilt trips, others flat-out threats. When I didn't answer, they started blowing up my company email and digging into my social media. The next 2 weeks, things just kept escalating. They showed up at my office, made a scene in the lobby until security had to escort them out. They reached out to distant relatives with made-up sob stories, painting me as the heartless son who turned his back on a struggling family. Even my grandparents weren't spared, they called them too. But after hearing the nonsense, my grandparents blocked them without hesitation. Then they crossed the line. They started messaging my clients through LinkedIn, claiming I was defrauding my own family. That was it. I hired an attorney. He gathered all the evidence, screenshots, emails, videos, witness statements, and helped me file for a restraining order. We sent a formal cease and desist, but they blew it off like it was junk mail. Didn't stop them. They just kept at it like nothing could touch them. The court date landed on a Tuesday morning in early June. I showed up with my lawyer and a thick binder full of receipts, every message, every voicemail, even security footage from my building. A few of my employees had written statements describing what they saw. Mom and Frank walked in with no lawyer, like they genuinely thought they were going to win this thing on raw emotion. When the judge asked them to explain themselves, Mom launched into this big teary monologue about parental rights and family duty. She tried to paint me as the runaway kid who cut ties in a fit of teen rebellion. Frank sat next to her, nodding along and throwing in little dramatic bits of his own. Then it was our turn. My attorney laid it all out, step by step. Every time they showed up, every harassing message, every lie sent to clients. He also handed over signed affidavits from my grandparents and Aunt Carla describing exactly how I ended up living with them at 16. As the truth unraveled, the judge's face turned darker and more serious. Then he looked directly at my mom and said, "Just to be clear, you forced your child out of your home at age 16, had no contact with him for 16 years, and then came back asking for financial support for your other children?" Mom's confidence wavered, her voice barely holding together. "He's successful now," she said, tears welling up. "He can afford to help his family." The judge didn't even blink. "Ms. Carter, the law does not require adult siblings to support each other financially, especially not under these circumstances." He granted the restraining order. 3 years. They were banned from contacting me, my business, or anyone connected to it. Mom's face crumbled like a sandcastle hit by a wave. And for the first time ever, I saw fear in Frank's eyes. The fallout hit our extended family hard. Some relatives criticized me, said I should have been the bigger person. Said blood was thicker than water. Others backed me up completely, saying they'd seen enough of Mom's behavior over the years to know I'd done the right thing. But my grandparents and Aunt Carla? They never wavered. They stood beside me, proud that I had protected the life I'd worked so hard to build. Then, about 3 months after the hearing, another email popped up. The sender? gracemartin98@email.com. Subject line, "Can we talk?" The message was short, tentative. "You don't know me, but I'm your sister. I'd like to meet if you're willing. No mom, no dad. Just me. I understand if you say no." I brought it to my therapist again. I didn't want to rip old wounds open or walk into another emotional trap. But after careful thought, I decided to meet her. We chose a public park for the first meeting, neutral ground. She arrived right on time. Tall, thin, with Mom's dark hair and an anxious, hopeful smile. The moment she saw me, she walked over slowly, cautiously. We sat on a bench by a quiet little pond, the silence stretching long and uncomfortable between us until she finally spoke. "I found out what really happened to you," she said. The real story, not the one they told me. She explained that while digging through the attic looking for old family photos, she stumbled across a box of letters from our grandparents. Those letters painted a very different picture of why I'd left, and it shattered the version she'd grown up believing. When she confronted our parents, everything came to a head. The truth spilled out in a mess of shouting and denial. "I'm so sorry for what they did to you," she said softly. "And for what they tried to do now." Unlike Owen, who fully embraced our parents' version of reality and their twisted expectations, Lena was appalled by how they had acted. She made a decision I hadn't expected. She packed up her things, moved out, found some roommates, and got a job to support herself. Instead of going to Cornell, she enrolled in community college. "I don't want help that comes with strings attached," she said. "And I definitely didn't want any of it coming from you, not like that." Over the next few months, we began to slowly build a relationship. It wasn't based on guilt or obligation, but on something healthier, mutual respect. I gave her advice when she needed it, helped her polish her resume, guided her through course selections. But financially? I kept it simple. Maybe a cup of coffee here, lunch there, but nothing beyond that. And to her credit, she never once asked for more. She understood that in order for us to grow something real, it had to come with boundaries. 6 months after the restraining order, I heard from distant family members that Mom and Frank were still spinning their web. They told anyone who'd listen that I'd abandoned the family after getting rich, trying to save face, I guess. Lena told me that when she refused to cut ties with me, they turned on her too. Just like that, she became another disposable child. By the time a year had passed since we reconnected, Lena had transferred to a state university on a partial scholarship. She stayed independent, determined to chase her education on her own terms. We'd found a rhythm, monthly dinners, regular texts, the kind of connection we should have had all along. At first, my grandparents were cautious around her, protective of me, naturally, after everything that had happened. But Lena's sincerity, her obvious remorse for what our parents did, and her strength in walking her own path eventually won them over. That Thanksgiving, when she sat at their table for the first time, something inside me eased. Watching them welcome her like family brought a kind of healing I didn't even know I needed. Owen, on the other hand, stayed firmly in our parents' corner. He sent Lena nasty messages now and then, accusing her of betrayal, parroting our mother's anger. She showed me some of them. It was a harsh reminder of the toxic home I escaped. And any guilt I might have felt about not helping him pay for college vanished completely after reading his entitled rants. That whole experience only solidified what years of therapy had already taught me. Family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about respect. It's about showing up for each other. It's about choosing kindness, not control. My mother never grasped that. To her, relationships were transactional, just tools to get what she wanted. And while I may never fully recover from being cast aside by the one person who was supposed to love me unconditionally, I've created a life surrounded by people who choose to be in it. Not because they expect something in return, but because they care about me. My company's doing well. My bond with my grandparents and Aunt Carla grows stronger every year. And now, unexpectedly, I have a sister who chose truth and integrity over comfort and convenience. People sometimes say I should feel smug, like I won some kind of victory over my mom. But I don't. There's no satisfaction in watching someone unravel into the worst version of themselves, especially someone you once loved. What I do feel, though, is peace. Peace in knowing that I broke the cycle. That I drew the lines that needed to be drawn. That I protected what I've built. My mother showed me exactly what family shouldn't look like. And, ironically, that painful lesson helped me appreciate what it should be. A real family doesn't need court orders or threats to stay together. It's a circle of trust, of genuine care, where love isn't earned by sacrifice but offered freely. For that strange, unintended gift, I guess, in a way, I can be grateful after all.